Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
It's quite cute. Okay, we've got 19 people on, including me. That's 18. We're missing 5. Rosalia's going to be late. Wendy's going to be late. Actually. Okay, cool.
Oh, please.
Okay, I think we can start. Okay. All right, well, I'm sure you're all checking your phone every now and again. So if you see anybody that's got stuck, I've disenabled the waiting room so they should be able to pop out. Sorry about that, guys. No idea why. I'm learning to go with the flow with these things. How are we all? It's like little, you're muting yourself. Oh, there we go. Sorry, lots of stuff going on. Okay, so today is pose analysis day, leading on to a bit of sequencing maybe. So I'm presuming you're all really good 200-hour students and you've all watched the website videos and read the manual and been very disciplined. Just nod. Okay. All right, that's good. Okay, so all right, so I'm going to ask some of you for your poses. We're going to talk through a couple of examples and to give you a little bit of an idea. So what happens is normally when you start doing your pose analysis, you're thinking like, why on earth do I have to do this? But by the end of the course, you will be sending me emails and you will be saying, I'm so glad I did that because I understand stuff now. Okay, so don't expect, some of you might have just got it all already, and that's fantastic. If you haven't, it's no big deal, you will, okay? So the first thing, so we're starting at the very basic stuff. So you've looked over your anatomy, you've looked over stretching and strengthening, and I know the stretching video is like, oh, for most people. But on your little document that you got, your little anatomy thing that you all filled in and handed to me, that's a guide for you to understand what you guys need to understand out of that huge amount of information that is on those website videos, okay? So basic things like, I need you to know that you cannot stretch a muscle. You cannot make it longer. Okay, I need you to understand that. And the reason I need you to understand that is because it's going to give you a better ability as a teacher and a practitioner to work out what is actually going on in poses, okay? So we're starting on the pose level. So all we're going to do, so all of you, I presume, have sent your pose choices to Laura, yes? And she's been in consultation with you about them, okay? So what you're gonna do, it's really, really simple, a simple process where you are going to look at the pose that you've chosen, and we're gonna go through a couple of examples. You're gonna look at the pose that you've chosen, then you're going to look at you, okay? And you're going to measure what the pose requires and what you have or have not, okay? So really simply, you know, the example that you guys have seen a lot is your firefly, the Titibasana example, that if you've watched the pose analysis video, website video, whatever you want to call it, then it comes up, that's the main pose, okay? So we look at something like firefly and we look at, okay, what does that pose require in terms of flexibility needs? How strong do I have to be and where? and what skill does the pose need? Okay, so then we've looked at the pose and gone, okay, we kind of understand basically, and I'm not asking you to be an anatomist and work out exactly what degree of hamstring flexibility you need. I want you to be able to look at the pose and go, hang on a sec, what shape is that person in Firefly, Chittibhasana? What shape are they in? What does it look like? Okay, what does it look like? What other pose does it look like? How far forward would he have to fold in to get into that pose? Does that make sense? Okay, so it's not that you have to go, oh, they need 130, 40 degrees of hamstring flexibility, hip flexion flexibility. If you want to do that, that's absolutely fantastic, all good, but I don't care about it. You know, I'll adapt to whatever level you are at. So what I do want you to be able to do is go, that person, if you want to do Chittibhasana, Firefly, if you can fold fairly flat in a wide-legged forward bend, that's going to help you a lot, okay? If you can't fold forward in a wide-legged forward bend, it's going to be really hard to do Chittibhasana. It's going to change everything for you guys, okay? So I want you to understand things on that level, basic, because I know a few of you are quite freaked out about it. So I want you to understand on that level. And this, I keep saying to you, it's a process, okay? As you go through the process, I promise you, you will end up on the other side and you will get stuff. Okay, you'll understand. At the end of the course, it'll all go, oh yeah, it makes sense to me, okay? So then you've got Chittibhasana, and then you want to go, okay, what is it? It's an arm balance, right? So Chittibhasana, if you just think of shapes of yoga poses, maybe shapes of other movements as well, if you, I don't know, Pilates or physios or anything like that, Chittibhasana is first and foremost an arm balance, right? We all can see that. On the arms, there it is. So we know immediately that because it's an arm balance, you've got to be fairly strong in your arms, okay? Not hugely strong, but strong enough to hold your body off the floor, pretty much, okay? So all of the arm balances arm balances require strength, and then it's whatever shape your legs are or your body is on top of your arms that we need to look at in terms of flexibility and maybe other strength needs. So if we look at wide-legged forward fold and we look at straight arms plank, so we can see that Chittibhasana is a wide-legged forward fold on top of your arms. Okay? As simple as that. Okay? So we look at what the shape is first, what it is similar to. And often, and if you can't do the final pose, it's helpful to look at a similar shape in a pose that you can do. So for instance, if you can't do Chittibhasana, it is very helpful for you to create that shape without your arms, so you can determine whether you've got the flexibility for it, okay? So it's like pulling the pose apart, like being a detective. Then we know, then we have to look at, so we've got flexibility, strength, and then we have to look at skill. What does it take for us to get into the pose? So if you were working on Chittibhasana and you thought, oh, you know what, I've ticked the boxes. I've got quite a good forward fold, wide-legged forward fold. I'm quite strong. I can hold a 30-second plank or a decent plank, right? So I've ticked those boxes pretty much, but I still can't do it. What does it take for me to be able to, what else is involved in the pose? Because it's not just flexibility and strength. There's a skill involved, right? There's where do my legs have to be on my arms? How do I get into the pose? How do I get into that shape? Where do my hands have to be behind me, or through my legs behind me? Where do they have to be for me to sit back? And if you've looked at Siddhivasana, you have to sit back into the pose, right? How far do I have to sit back? How fast do I have to sit back? What's happening to my legs? It's okay, I've got that. I can sit back, but hang on a second, my legs start to slide down. Why? Oh, maybe I need to squeeze in my thighs, my inner thighs, my adductors a little bit more, okay? Oh, maybe I'm sitting back too far, and then my bum, my pelvis, gets heavy, slides down. So it's working through the skills of poses. And it's quite a challenging thing to do if you can't do the pose, okay? And this is where I come in, right? So when you do your pose analysis, you can send me videos before going, okay, I've measured this, I've done that, but I still can't work it out. And that's when I try to work it out for you, okay? Because it's tricky. So depending on the poses that you've chosen, depends on the level of skill that is required to do the pose. So if you take something like a plank, what level of skill does the plank require? Mary.
Sorry, can you repeat the question because the internet.
That's fine. What level of skill does plank require? I mean, is it a lot of skill or a little skill?
Little skills.
A little skill, okay? So the poses are progressive. So we can look at plank as our baby arm balance, right? In terms of progression, it's our baby arm balance. And Siddhivasana is more complicated. So it's going to require a lot more skill to do something like Siddhivasana. Okay, so let's look at standing splits and proper splits. Which one's harder? Candice Lewis. I'm just calling you all out so that you'll talk. Say again, I didn't hear.
Proper splits.
Proper splits. Yeah, it's not complicated. It's proper splits is way harder. Okay, so Nicola, why is proper splits harder than standing splits?
Because if you break it, it's the flexibility, strength, and skill debate again. So more flexibility required at both sides of hamstrings. Strength in terms of holding, I would say, and skill because I think it's not as simple as just doing splits. There's a lot of technique behind it.
Exactly. So each pose of those three elements, they have flexibility, strength, and skill. That's our kind of three main big topics. And all of the poses are completely different, right? We know that. They all look different, we're different in them, etc. So some poses are much more flexibility focused than strength. Some poses are much more skill focused than flexibility or strength. So they change, they're not the same, okay? So we know, everybody in the whole wide world knows that splits is a big flexibility pose. It's the most important element in splits, way more than strength or skill, okay? So let's compare splits to handstand. Kasha.
Well, I'd say handstand is a lot more complicated and a lot more difficult to do.
Okay, in what element, Kasha? In strength, flexibility, skill?
I would say strength and skill.
Exactly. So perfect. So you can see where we're going, right? It's like so splits will require much more flexibility work, right? much more flexibility assessment in your bodies if that's one of your poses that you've chosen. But handstand, especially a handstand balance, say in the middle of the room, or something perhaps like jumping from downward dog to handstand, that's skill. You know, definitely strength as well, but skill. It's, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know if any of you are hand balancers, but to be able to learn to balance in the middle of the room and hold a balance for 30 seconds takes most people 5 years to learn, to be able to do it consistently. Whereas somebody with the flexibility requirements can do splits immediately. Does that make sense? So splits doesn't require the same level of skill work, the how to do it, the training as handstand. And if you were to offer, I mean, these are big poses, obviously, but if you were to offer splits in a class, then you would be doing progressive sequencing, warming people's hamstrings up and quads, etc. And then you would offer splits, and really only those people that could go into splits would just go bang and they would go into splits. Whereas with something like handstand, you would almost be guaranteed that nobody, or maybe 1 or 2 people in your class, would even get close to being able to go bang and hold a balance in the middle of the room. The one is much harder than the other, skill-wise. With splits, you could just say, you know, you could do Ardha Hanumanasana, so half splits progressively, and then take them further and further, and then they just slide into splits. Whereas something with handstand, you have to talk about focus, drishti, where to look, how to grip, how much to kick up, etc. It's much more complicated in terms of skill. Does that make sense to everyone? So the poses are completely different. Even within the categories of poses, you can see, let's look at back bends. Okay, so we can look at a back bend like Ustrasana, camel, or we could look at a back bend like Urdhva Dhanurasana, wheel, or a back bend like your one in class, mermaid, and full mermaid. And they are all completely and utterly different. They all require different things. So let's look at wheel, full wheel, compared to full mermaid, or, you know, where you, so your mermaid that you're doing in class, but with the strap. Or if you're very flexy with your hand on your foot. What is which pose requires more flexibility? Which pose requires more flexibility?
Mermaid.
Sorry, is somebody speaking?
Mermaid requires more flexibility.
Yeah. So mermaid, what flexibility, Christine?
Shoulder extension, and then spine.
And then the spine, okay? So absolutely, a lot of quad stuff as well. I'm sure most of you felt that stretch in your quad, right? Okay, so why does mermaid require more flexibility in the spine to achieve the, let's say, the final version? What are we doing in mermaid? What are we trying to do in mermaid? Really simply. Candace.
The back bend.
You're trying to do a back bend, but what are you trying, what shape are you trying to create?
Yeah.
Cash is doing a drawing like this, okay? So yes, you're trying to put your foot on your head, okay, is the aim of the pose, right? You're trying to put your foot on your head, whereas in wheel, what are you trying to do? Not put your foot on your head, okay? You know, you get those people that can do wheel and they can walk closer and closer and closer in, and they can actually lift their foot and put it on their head. But as a commonly taught pose, that is not what we're trying to do. So it requires less back flexibility and less quad flexibility, because the back bend in mermaid is coming a lot from your thigh, and I'm sure that some of you can really feel that too, like ow, ow, ow. You see everybody's nodding pretty much, like yeah, get it. Okay, right? So you don't have to be able to do the final pose. You can feel, okay, I can feel my quad being stretched at the back. I feel crunchy in my back. That's quite a back bend, etc. Shoulder flexion. So this is a little bit of a tricky one. Wheel and mermaid both require shoulder flexion ability, the ability to reach up and back, okay? What is the difference between the two of them? Which one requires more arm strength?
Wheel.
Wheel. Wheel. Why?
You're holding your body.
You're holding your body, and even before, you have to push up. Okay? So if we think about the push-up in wheel, it's not the same, but it's like pushing myself up from the floor into a plank, okay? But doing it this way. So it's an actual push-up. So it requires more strength. Whereas when we're doing mermaid, unless you are super, super flexy and you can just reach back and hold your foot, okay? We normally are using a strap, or you're doing the hook version, okay? So the shoulder flexion required in mermaid for most people, we're using something to pull us, okay? Because we've got hold of a strap and we're walking down the strap, or we've got hold of our foot in the crook of our arms and we're pulling in, whereas in Urdhva Dhanurasana, in wheel, we haven't got anything other, we push. It's a different thing, okay? So we've perfectly said, Kasia said we require more push-up strength, right? We require more back bend more push-up strength in wheel than we do in mermaid, okay? But more flexibility in terms of our spine and our quad in mermaid, yes? So can you see, they're both back bends, but they both require different things. So now which one, and this is not an exact science, it really depends on the person doing the pose. It's something, if you can take out into your world of teaching, the pose is meaningless. The pose is a shape. So the pose is just a construct. It's meaningless without the person in it, okay? And everybody's experience in a pose is different in terms of physiology and anatomy, all right? Some people are massively flexible, some people are very strong, different shapes, proportions, all of those different things, okay? So we have to know that this is not an exact science, that it won't apply, it'll generally apply to most people, yes? Does that make sense? Okay, so which pose, comparing wheel and mermaid, or mermaid, which pose requires more skill? Kasia?
I would say wheel, because you've got the positioning of your hands in relation to your shoulders and the push up and getting all of that right is probably a little bit more skill orientated.
A little bit more complex. Anybody else have got anything to comment? Nicola?
I would have thought mermaid, only because flexibility, but I mean, I struggle with it, and a lot of it's got to do with where I put my back leg, how I hook. And I found with Laura, just how she said what to do, where to look, made a huge difference. Whilst with wheel, I find I've got to know the technique, but I find it more about a power, the ability to get myself up.
Okay. This is perfect, because this is what I mean by it being meaningless without putting you in the pose, or you a human in the pose. You know, it's because we have such different experiences. So it would be a classic thing. I'm not saying, Kasha, that you have the experience that you said, the skill thing, but it may be for Kasha, pushing up into wheel. Maybe, I'm not saying you do, I'm giving an example. Maybe Kasha doesn't have the strength to do it, so it becomes more complex in terms of like, how do I do this without the strength? Whereas Nicola may have the strength quite easily to push up into Urdhva Dhanurasana, but actually be very confused in terms of, you know, where can I put my body for mermaid to maximize the fact that I don't have that much spinal flexibility. So it becomes, it's, you know, and this is why the pose analysis is really good, because it becomes your experience in the pose. So all of those things, what I'm trying to say is that they differ a little, right? So depending on the person, but you can see how they do just by exploring. Ian, you wanted to say something, now your blue hand is gone.
Yeah, Nicola beat me to it. But I was going to say mermaid, I think, is a more skillful pose, because, I mean, like you said, you have to note where you're putting your legs, where your hip needs to be, where your shoulder needs to be, where you hook. Whereas wheel, you plonk your hands behind you, you plonk your feet down, and you lift. It's a more strength-based pose, I think.
Okay, so with wheel, how's your wheel?
I don't struggle with it at all, but I've got the shoulder strength to lift.
Exactly. So this is why it's your experience, right? It's because when people can do poses, they go, I don't understand what you mean. It's not hard. I can just do it, right? It's the people that are very flexy, like I'm relatively flexy. I don't understand how people can't do splits. It's like, you know, I don't have to learn it. It's just like, well, I did a little bit, but it's just, you know, people that are very flexy just go into things and go, well, there I am, you know, at the end of it. So it's a different experience. Olga Mari, got a little hand up. Olga. I don't know, she's just got a little hand up, but she's not saying anything. Okay, so can you see the differences? All right, but both of them require different skill aspects. Okay, so for me, mermaid, and I'm really not a good backbend. Mermaid, skill-wise, is way easier than Urdhva Dhanurasana. Okay, right at the bottom, because Urdhva Dhanurasana was like, my arms are weird. They really are. I've got a big carrying angle. My shoulder flexion is terrible. So wheel was very uncomfortable for me when I first started doing it. And I didn't understand. I don't know. I just wanted to get, I was so busy in my head with the push-up, way strong, but my shoulder flexion wouldn't work. So wheel became something I really had to work on, to put my hands in the right places for my body, to make wheel, I wouldn't say brilliant, but definitely much more comfortable for me. Whereas mermaid was just like, oh, okay, cool. I'm never going to be able to just grab my foot and put my foot on my head. I'll do it with a strap. How do I do this? This is fine. I can just work that. So it's a different experience for each of you. Okay, that's what's most important. But then, so the pose analysis is for you guys to explore your poses for your body. And hopefully you've got some poses that it's things that you actually want to do, and they're not just Laura trying to make you do poses, but hopefully stuff that you want to do that you can explore, because the more complex the pose is for you, right? The more complex the pose is for you, the more you have to train, okay? And that brings in the whole element of your own practice at home. So I don't know if this is helpful to you guys, but it was my experience that I will share, that for the first maybe 10 years of me doing yoga, I struggled to have a home practice, really struggled. I'd much rather go to a class, go to an ashram, anything. but just every time I wanted to do my home practice, I'd start and then I'd get all like slightly angry. I'd know, like annoyed, and I'd just stop. And then eventually I realized, well, I need to do this because I was getting better and better, and there were things that I wanted to work on that you couldn't do in classes. And then I realized, I don't have to have a home practice that is go in and do a whole class, inhale, exhale. I can actually just choose some poses I want to work on. That's it. As simple as that. I didn't realize I could do that because nobody really taught that back in, when I learned yoga. They would just make you come to a class. So what I do now as a rule, every year on New Year's Day, I choose 3 poses. That's it. 3 poses that I want to work on for the year. The next New Year's, I look at them, and normally I maybe got better at 2, and the other one needs another year of work. Okay, so that's kind of and it's actually guided my home practice really nicely because it's fun. I go, okay, I'm doing a flexibility pose, I'm doing a strength pose, I'm doing one that is highly skilled. Those are normally the ones that take the longest time. But so I want you to look at your pose analysis like that, to try and work out what you need to work on for a particular pose. So if we break it down to going, I've got flexibility needs for the pose, I've got maybe percentage of the strength needs, okay? I'm not expecting you by next week to be able to do your pose, all right? What I'm looking for is for you to identify what you need to work on in the pose. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm not, depending on what poses you've chosen, I'm not expecting you to be able to do your pose, right? I'm looking for you to break the pose down, break you down, put the 2 together and go, I can't do it because maybe, sometimes it's guessing, okay? When I look at you guys, I also have to sometimes guess and work out what's actually going on. So I'm not looking for you to go, I've chosen, I want to do jumping from down dog to handstand. You have to be able to do it by next week. Okay, I really don't expect it. I want you just to look at what is going on in your poses. So let's talk about your pose choice. So Wendy, what pose have you chosen? One of your poses.
Dances.
Dances as in full dances with the
Yes.
full
Yes.
dances.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is perfect. So first of all, on the complicated level of poses, what do we think full dances is? Does everybody knows what full dances is, I'm presuming? Okay, if you don't, shout, and I sadly can't just whip in and demonstrate it for you. Okay, so on the level of being complicated, what do we think this pose is? Candice, Rick.
I would say quite complicated because you've got both arms going over your head, so you've got a lot of shoulder flexion, and then you've got to have your drisky, very good balance needs to be good because you're on one leg, and strength. A lot of strength in you.
It's a huge pose, okay? It's a huge pose, all right? So let's break it down, okay? Let's break it down. So this is also very helpful. When you break the pose down, when you learn to break poses down, it's not that complicated. I promise you, you're all going to get it, all right? When you break the pose down, it's also going to help you with sequencing, okay? Sequencing is just, what do I need to work on to help people get into the pose? That's all it is. And it's got the same elements as your pose analysis. So first of all, what is dances? Above everything, what is dances in terms of pose categories?
It's a balance.
It's a balance, yes. And what is the next category it's in?
Back bend.
It's
Back bend, yeah.
back bend, okay? What's the next category it's in?
It's stretch.
Stretch? Stretch of what?
Quads.
Hamstring.
Quads
And quads.
and who said hamstrings? Put your hand up. I can't hear.
Hamstring flexibility.
Hamstring flexibility and quad flexibility. What pose has got extreme hamstring and quad flexibility needs besides dancers?
Pigeon.
Even more. Dancers is even bigger than pigeon. Dancers is like pigeon, but with your front leg straight out. That's a tip.
Warrior 3.
Sorry, somebody spoke and I couldn't hear. Put your hand up.
Mermaid.
Yes, which one? Candice?
Mermaid.
Mermaid, yes, but with the leg out in front. Because dancers is hamstrings and quads, okay? Mermaid has got a bent leg in front. So if I straightened my leg in mermaid and brought hamstrings into it, what would that be then?
Split.
Splits.
Splits. Yeah, standing splits.
Standing splits, but even more, even more. So if you go and you look at a picture of full dancers, you are literally, if you look at someone like Nicolaus Iyengar in full dancers, he is almost in splits. If he wants to take his foot to his head, he is in splits. Your quads are being stretched like a lot. Your hamstrings are being stretched a lot, very similar to splits. You're doing a back bend, right? And you're balancing on one leg. So it's quite a pose, right? But then you just think, wow. So imagine trying to teach that in a class. It's quite a thing. But so with your pose analysis, those are the things that you're going to have to look at. Ella, oh, sorry, you had your blue hand, but then it went away.
Oh, I was just going to say splits, but
Oh,
it's
what are you saying? Just shout out, okay? So what other flexibility would we need? So what other flexibility would we need in terms of the back bend? So we've got hamstrings, quad flexibility, the back bend flexibility, and what else? What else will help? That's it. Aman? Yeah.
Shoulder flexion.
Shoulder flexion. The more you can reach back beyond your shoulders, the easier the pose is going to be. Okay. So those are the massive flexibility requirements that dancers, full dancers, right? What strength does dancers need?
What strength?
What strength do dancers need? I couldn't hear.
Quad strength?
Quad strength, a little bit, yeah, a little bit. More of a stretch in the back quad. What strength?
Ankle.
Actually, yes, okay. Ankle strength, leg strength, because you're standing on one leg. So I don't know if your guys' experience is the same as my experience. Of course, it's different. If I stand on one leg for a long time, then I go to the other leg for a long time, and I do that, I don't know, say 5 times on each leg for that, my glutes get sore. My side bum, like glute med, it's called, okay? I get quite achy there, and I get achy in the ankle. So in terms of not so much for your own pose analysis, but for when you take this into sequencing, that would come under the what would tire, right? So I don't know if you guys have looked at the sequencing yet, but one of the sets is what will tire. So if you were going, you know what, I'm going to teach dance as my main peak pose in a sequence, and you stuck in a whole heap of one-legged balances before dances, by the time you got to dances, what do you think would happen?
Tired, yeah, weak.
Your ankle's going to get tired. You know, it's like this is more into the sequencing side of things, but it's, you know, I see people going, okay, we want to teach a big arm balance, so we need arm strength, like bent arm strength there. So depending on what pose you're doing, bent arm strength. So we're going to put in a whole load of chaturangas beforehand, lots, let's do 30 chaturangas. So what's going to happen when you get to your final arm balance? It's too much, okay? Unless you're teaching advanced fit people, it's too much. So we can't build strength within a class. We can only build it over time, of course. Like you can get a little bit stronger by next week, but not that much stronger, right? It's going to take a lot longer. So we have to look at what's going to tire. Okay, now in terms of the skill of dancers, the skill requirements, what skill do you think we need to look at?
Balance.
Balance, yes. So what does balance mean? How are we going to help with balance?
Christy.
Drishti.
Yeah.
Focus. Simple as that. If anybody's in doubt about that, I do it normally when I teach it. I make everybody stand on one leg and close their eyes. You just fall over, pretty much. Okay. So drishti is incredibly important. Okay. So that would be your main skill. And what else? What would be the other skill of dancers?
Flexibility.
So flexibility isn't a skill. So skill is more, so we've got flexibility, strength, and skill. So skill is much more an action, like where do you put something, or where do you look, or do you lean, or etc., etc. So that's more that kind of thing. So what, somebody said it with mermaid earlier, Nicola?
I was just about to say,
Yeah,
it's about how to reach back, and whether you're going back or you're going over, it'll be in the technique.
Exactly. So like mermaid, but way harder because you're standing on one leg, right? You have to be able to know where to reach back, how to reach back, and how to do this action if you're doing it that way. So it's called flip the grip. I don't know if Laura's probably told you about it already. You can do it with the strap, or you can do it, if you're very, very flexy, you do it with your hand. But fundamentally, if you're not doing the walk down the strap version, and for me, I prefer the flip the grip version. I feel like my shoulder is much more intact, whereas this feels quite arduous, hard for me. But my experience is not your experience. So you need to, when Wendy's working out, she needs to work on what works for her. Okay, but flipping the grip is literally, you would have to be able, somebody would have to know you need to turn your palm up. Okay, so you need to turn to the side, palm up, right? And then I bend as I lean back, I bend my elbow and draw in like that. Okay, it's called flipping the grip. Okay, if you did this and you had your hand even turned down, you can't flip. It becomes very challenging to flip that way. Does that make sense? So it's really important. Also, what I see people doing, and I'm really talking about people like me that are not the big backbenders of it. I see people doing this, facing forward. Okay, for the big backbenders of the world, that's not going to work, okay, because we just get stuck here, right? We need to backbend. So we need to turn to the side, okay, reach back, and then turn around and come that way. So it's quite a challenging little thing to do, a little movement, action to do. So if we were doing a sequence and our peak pose was dancers, when would we teach this move?
Sorry, what's the question? When would we teach the actual pose?
No. So if we were doing a sequence and our peak pose was dancers, and we know that one of the skill requirements of dancers is the ability to reach back, to turn the palm up, to do this action, say we're doing this version, when would we teach that?
Try in mermaid.
Sequence. Sorry, Nicola?
Mermaid would lead up to that. If one is the...
Exactly. Mermaid, you would be in a very basic mermaid teaching flip the grip, because if you chose a pose like dancers for your yoga sequence, okay, if you're out there, you're a yoga teacher and you choose a pose like dancers, right? you've got to assume that you've got a room full of very, very, very advanced yogis, okay? Because you know they are going to need massive hamstring flexibility, massive quad flexibility, ability to stand on one leg, ability to back bend, ability to shoulder flex, plus a load of skills. So mermaid's like your basic, mermaid becomes basic, okay? Because you've chosen a hugely challenging pose that has got so much. So you can't teach, you can teach half dances to beginners, but half dances is really not a complicated pose. I think warrior three might even be harder, okay? It's a balance, it's a great pose, but it's not complex. Dances is a whole different beast. So something like mermaid would be almost essential as a prep, not a peak pose, because you've taken it a level higher. Does that make sense? Yes? So we'll talk about it more when we talk about sequencing, which I think I've got you guys on Wednesday, and we'll talk a little bit more about sequencing, is that if you've chosen a pose that is like, whoa, then you start much higher. If my peak pose was half dances, where I'm reaching back, I've got hold of my foot in this pose, holding like this. What is the difference between half dances and full dances? Does everybody know what I mean by half dances? What's the difference?
Yeah. Different push and balance.
Say again?
It's a different requirement on balance.
It's a different requirement on balance.
Whilst this one, your center is quite narrowed.
Totally different requirement on balance. That's right. Bronwyn, did you say something?
Sorry, in the half dances, if you had the arm forward, so you'd have a balancing and opposition lever to help you balance.
Opposition feet to help you balance, easier balance. Okay. Anybody? What else? Does it need as much flexibility?
No.
No. Does it need as much quad flexibility?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see where I'm going with this. Half dances is kind of like a warrior three and probably not as hard. Okay, you've got an arm out in front, one out behind you. It's a lovely little balance. It's great, but it does not have the same level of requirement. Does it have the same level of skill requirements as full dances? No. Okay. So then if my peak pose was dances, I would then be able to start with some little floor back stretches, very babyish poses, and I wouldn't need at all to put mermaid in before dances. Okay, which pose is harder, mermaid or half dances?
Mermaid.
Mermaid. Does everybody agree with that? Okay. Some people like me hate one-legged balances. I'm terrible. I can balance longer on my hands than I can balance on one leg. It's terrible. I never work it. But it literally, mermaid is much harder. Okay. Half mermaid even is awkward. Ella, your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, does your peak pose always have to be your most challenging pose? Like, you know, of the set, well, of the sequence rather. Like, does it have to be the one that requires the most skill or will tire the most? Yeah.
Let me clarify just what you mean. Do you mean within a sequence, or do you mean out of all of the category, like all of the forward bend? Does it have to be the?
No, I mean within a sequence. So if you're conducting like a sequence, then okay, so your peak pose would be the most advanced one. Okay.
Your peak pose is the most advanced one. Okay, so it's and really you don't have to go out there and teach like this, but we're trying to get you to teach in a more skillful way in terms of looking at requirements of poses, how you can get people towards poses, etc. So the peak pose is really the most complex pose in the sequence for most people. Okay, it depends. But for most people, it's going to be the most complex pose, and it's the thing that centers your sequence because it's guiding you in terms of flexibility, strength, and skill needs. Okay, and it's a challenge to put it all. we can all go out there. I mean, you guys can finish your teacher training and you can go out there and copy somebody's sequence and just go and teach it. But we're trying to give you something else on top of just like a general flowy sequence. We're trying to get you able to help yourself get into a pose and help your students move towards the pose as well. Okay, let's do somebody else's pose. Who's got a pose they want to go, I'm doing this pose? Bronwyn, go for it.
I think is it Vasisthasana, so side plank, but with the leg holding the toe, so with the leg extended.
I think I even say this on one of my website videos for the 300 hour. I go Vasisthasana with the leg in, Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana. I still don't know what the pose is called, and every time I speak about it, I think I must go look, and then I forget about it, but I know what you're talking about. Does everybody know? So side plank with the leg up but holding the toe. So not the kind of star version sometimes taught, the actual leg up holding the toe. Does everybody understand that? Please don't make me have to go and demonstrate it. I'll have to warm up. Okay, so I can demonstrate the Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana. All right, so, okay, first and foremost, what is the pose? What's the big category of the pose? What is Bronwyn going to some of?
Arm balance.
Arm?
Balance.
Arm balance, definitely. So what? Arm strength. Okay. So what strength is she going to need?
Sit.
So when you're inside plank, what do you feel working?
Shoulder.
Shoulder. Sorry, I don't know who spoke. Who spoke? Put your hands up. It's like a blow. Lini. Shoulder. Yes. Yes. Shoulder. And what else?
Would it be latimus dorsi, your side muscles, your side core muscles?
Yes, you know, and a perfect way of doing it or trying to work it out is to go, okay, I get it that, you know, there's this going on in the shoulder while I'm doing it, but what else do I feel? Okay, I can come down onto my forearms. Like if you do a forearm side plank, you can just feel all these muscles down here working to stabilize you. Okay, they're holding you up and they're on like big times. If they're not, and it's a classic thing that you see when you teach side plank in classes, if no work going or not a lot of work going on here, you see people move right a lot. So there's a lot of work. So Bronwyn is going to need shoulder strength, lats, obliques, the side strength. And you don't need to know, I don't care if you know the names of the muscles or not. You can just say side stuff going on down here. I feel it, you know, I feel it. I understand what that is. What other strength? Yes, Candice, yes. I don't know if Nicola, you're doing this as well. So there's a lot of this going on. Wrist strength, right, guys? Like wrist strength. And I mean, how many of you, there's quite a few of you don't have cameras on, but how many of you have wrist complaints in yoga? 1, 2, not very many. Normally you must see the 300 hours. They're like, oh, my wrist, but they are doing the handstand program, so that's probably why. Okay, so the point is wrist strength is a real thing. So let's tie that into sequencing. So now we know Bronwyn's going to have wrist strength, arm strength, shoulder strength, and side strength. Those are going to be the big things, right? Now tie this into sequencing. So we're taking a bit further. What is going to tire in, yes, wrists and shoulders, okay? You're not really going to tire your sides, but wrists and shoulders, because you're on one arm. It's hard, right? Really, really hard. So what you wouldn't want then to do a lot of load bearing wrist stuff, like huge stuff, or one arm stuff. So often the pose that Bronwyn has chosen it's also a big pose. It's a challenging pose. And then when you get to that final version of the pose and you then are on your one arm, you have to take hold of your toe. So you have to lean forward, take hold of your toe, lean back, take the leg up in the air. Does that make the pose harder or easier than just a normal side plank?
Much harder.
Much harder. The load becomes much harder. So what has happened, and I don't want to get into the technicalities of it, when you do a normal side plank, you've got both feet on the ground. So the minute you have both feet on the ground in any pose, it makes the pose a both feet pose, okay? So the load is, a lot of it is in your feet, okay? The minute you take one leg off, so we know if we do a plank, right? And we've got plank with both feet on the ground. We're like, that's okay, feeling it a little bit. Then if we lift one leg in plank, we can feel, whoa, that's up, because we've moved the load, okay? We've shifted the load. So the load has gone more towards the shoulders than the feet, okay? So in Bronwyn's pose, the minute she takes that leg up in there, it comes off the ground, and it's not just floating in a star shape up here, because that means the load is still towards the feet, not a lot, or a lot in her arm, but not as much. The minute she takes it up to here, she's loading much more on her arm. So she's going to have to be so strong because she's moved the load. And she's also going to have to be so strong that she's able to keep that balance as she moves, because she's going to have to reach forward to get her foot, come back, turn her body, and take the leg up, all whilst on one arm. Okay? So pretty punchy pose. So you can see it's quite complicated, all the work. So what else is Bronwyn? So we've done the strength needs. You know what's going to tie up, and that's more for sequencing. What else, what is Bronwyn going to need in terms of flexibility?
Hamstring.
Hamstring. Who said that? Bronwyn, was that you or Wendy? I couldn't tell. There you go. Thanks.
No, it was Wendy.
Hamstring flexibility. So if we looked at the shape of the pose, she's inside plank, she's got her leg up in the air, she's holding it with the toe, holding finger to toe. What does that look like in another pose? What shape does that look like?
I can't remember its name.
That's okay, you can describe it.
You stand up and you lift your leg to the side. So if you're getting the motion, the feeling, and you can do it different directions to feel, because you've got to get different balancing contexts. So that what you're talking about just now.
Yes. So does everybody know what Nicola is talking about?
You did a half moon.
It's called Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana, extended nose to leg foot pose. I have no idea what it's called in English. Okay, so it's
Standing.
It's this. Okay, this.
Yeah.
Okay, out to the front and out to the back. Okay, so that's the pose. Could we?
What about?
Sorry. Somebody put your hand up. Yeah.
What about it's like a splits?
No, it's
Not.
It's I get where you're going with it. Splits involves a lot more quad, and we wouldn't want, and quad stretching. So we wouldn't really want to stretch out quads for this pose. So it doesn't link so well. But I get what you mean in terms of hamstring. But Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana is hamstrings and adductors, which is inner thighs. So if we look at the pose on top, the leg is actually slightly in front. So if you look at me, sorry, I've got socks on here. If you look at me from the side, okay, my leg, if I did it against, if I did it against a wall, my leg is slightly,
Oh, okay.
so it's
Yeah.
not directly out to the side and it's not here in front. So where else could we do that shape?
Would
Bronwyn?
Would Trikonasana help at a more basic level, because you're stretching out that adductor and the hamstring and you've that range?
Absolutely. So going to see the shapes, okay? Could I do that shape lying down? Leon's nodding?
Yes.
You could, right? I can lie down and do, we call it Supta Padangusthasana. So it is that pose traditionally, with the standing on one leg pose, is you take your leg up in front of you, out to the side, bring it back, up in front of you, then you let it go and you hold like this. It's quite a lot of quad work. But that pose we can do lying down. Okay? We can create that same shape lying down. We found a way of creating it standing, so from Trikonasana to Utthita Hasta Padangusthasana, the extended, that thing I just showed you on the wall that I must look up the name of. What pose could we do seated that would look like the legs in Bronwyn's pose?
Would butterfly help, Catherine?
Not really. It's fine.
Okay.
One of those annoying poses that it's fine for people that are very flexy, but doesn't really warm anybody up that isn't. It's just one of those, but it's fine, you know, it's fine to put it in. What pose could we do on our bottoms?
What about a seated forward fold?
Seated forward fold, you could definitely do. Something else that looks even more like that pose where just one leg is out to the side. So,
Side squat or lunge?
What, like Skandasana?
Skandasana.
Side squat. I don't know the sense.
Yeah, I think you're referring to Skandasana. Yes, we use side squatting. That's a good one, definitely. Your leg is out to the side. What about sitting on your bum?
Candace.
Candace.
I don't know the name. Janu. The one leg in and the one leg out, but the twisted one.
Absolutely. Parivrita Janushirasana. Yes. So you've got your one leg bent and the other leg is out to the side. Okay. So it's the same shape. All right. And then what about, Fabi, do you want to say something? Can't see you.
Sorry, my connection is very weak today. I was just going to say Johnny Sir's like the one similar to Johnny from the beginning, but then Candace, I think, said it.
Yeah. But you're all thinking about it, and Christine has just put it on the chat. Compass pose. Do you know what compass is? Yes, no? If people
can you show it?
Yes. Just tell me, I've got to tilt my computer a little bit. There we go. So compass is just when you're sitting like this and your leg is up in the air. Okay?
Okay.
You can do it when you're doing, I'm sorry, I'm not very warm, and you can do this.
Okay. Cool.
And you can even make stuff up as you go. It doesn't even have to be a pose, but you're creating the shape and the warmth. And we've moved a little bit more into sequencing, but this is good. So you're getting the idea. So you can see that, you know, within a sequence, we can actually just look at, we can go, oh, can we create that shape on the floor? Can we create that shape seated? Can we create it standing? And it doesn't have to be a yoga pose. You wouldn't, I mean, you know, things like Cradle 4 and all those things, they weren't even in yoga until a couple of years ago, maybe more than a couple, but you can create shapes around that. Kasia, you wanted to say something, and then Fabi.
I just wanted to say, in one of the yoga classes that I went to, we'd gone through the whole sequence and we got to the peak pose. and the whole class was sort of falling all over the place and not actually able to do the pose. But the teacher then said to us, you've done this pose, you were lying on your back and you've done it. So just, you know, remember what it was like on the floor. And then we went back into it, and then suddenly there was no one falling all over the place. Everybody was able to, you know, it's sort of like a mindset. You got over the fear of the balancing and all of that because you've actually done it.
Exactly.
So yeah, just wanted to.
That's exactly what I want you guys to do, because all of the trickier, I've got a very big bee in my bonnet about the fact that I talk to the 300 hours a lot about it, that yoga has become so simplified. Like, you know, when I started yoga, even, I don't know, say 8 years ago, when you went to yoga class, you did arm balances, you did back bend, you did loads of different stuff, and people actually talked more. They helped you to get towards the pose, like not brilliantly, but they at least gave it a try. And I really strongly believe that you can do that. It just takes a little bit more thought into, I'd like to teach this particular pose or I'd like to teach back bends today. How can I help the people? How can I understand what the requirements are? How can I put that together? And if you're going to be a vinyasa flow teacher, in a flow, but that you can still teach, you can still go, you know, guys, remember you needed your drishti, or like Kasia said, you know, you did this on the floor. Remember where you had to put your arms, or remember that actually you need your leg to go behind your shot, whatever it is. You can actually bring it in when it's normally to do with when people's central nervous systems are calmer, they're able to process more, right? So if you're doing something that requires skill, it's quite good to introduce that skill when people are calmer and not in the actual peak pose for the first time, because people's brains are normally going, I don't know how to do this. What does she want me to do, or he want me to do? And they don't hear a word you are saying. Trust me, I've taught handstands for many years, and when people are upside down, unless they are completely happy, I can say to somebody upside down who's safe against a wall, I can say, try to flex your feet. Do this with your feet. And they will just go, I don't know what you mean. And these are yoga teachers. Like, they will just, I don't know what you mean. I'm going, flex your feet. Like that. And I go down to their faces and I go like this, flex your feet. And they go, I don't know what you mean. So it really is such a good idea to bring in a skill. Obviously, you've got to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, but to bring it in actually earlier. In fact, right, where's Bronwyn gone? There she is. You see, you all move around, so I'm going to find. Bronwyn, did you want to say something? Because you've got.
I was just going to say, sometimes what I don't know, personally I find, but wouldn't it help with a lot of sort of really complex and balancing movements when you actually focus on breath as well, if you use your breath, because I think that also helps you maintain that calm, and then you're more able to do the movement because you're less stressed.
Completely. And that again brings in nervous system. And I've seen people, trainees over the years, one in particular, she put together the most incredible sequence where she focused only on breath in balance. That was it. But and a mudra, this mudra, but she brought it in to every single pose before the peak pose. So by the time they got to the peak pose, she would go, okay, come back. Now we're doing 5 breaths, but with both hands, she'd make them hold like this. And it worked unbelievably. So it's, yes, absolutely. It is just to breathe and relax. And I do think that if the pose is incredibly complex and it's the first couple of times somebody's doing it, there's a lot of stuff going on, so they may not come back to their breath, or they may lose their focus, or because they've got, like all of us in life, we've got to kind of have the opportunity to try stuff more than once, right? You know, it's like, getting closer. So in the actual peak pose, and when you're doing your own pose analysis, it's like, you'll see that actually when you do it more than once, I mean, it's so obvious, we know this, right? When we do it more than once, we get to go, no, it actually, I leant a little bit forward there. I feel a little bit more comfortable. And we progress within the pose as well. And then things like breath come into it and all of those things. So yes, good point. Kasia and then Ahmed.
Sorry, I hadn't lowered my hand. Sorry.
Okay, Ahmed.
May I ask about the hip stable? My hip is not very stable when I'm doing side plank with the legs up and even extend the triangle. So I have question about the hip stability about that.
So the two are very different poses. So what do you feel in the side plank?
When I'm doing the side plank, when my legs up, I feel the hip, like if I doing this leg up, my hip is like going to fall out.
Okay, we don't want that to happen. All right. So you are very flexible, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, this is to do with different experiences in poses, all right? My hips never feel like they're going to fall out. It's just like they never do, all right? I'm not as flexible as you are. So with you, I think when you feel it's going to fall out, do you feel like it's going to go too far?
Actually, it's not within the joint, but if like, I feel like here, this part is not stable. So I feel like I will let go of it. I will just, it pull me out more like.
It pulls you out. Okay, so can you do me a favor and can you send me a video? Because I need to see what is pulling you out. So a few things can pull you out. It depends if we're talking, you're saying it's not in the joint. So if it's not in the joint, but I have to see it, then it's to do with either your level of flexibility and you're taking the leg too far, or you're not stabilizing from underneath.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing this. So will you send me a video? Because then I can actually look and say it's difficult for me to work out. It's either joint where you're very flexible and you can take the leg back, and in which case you have to bring it forward and into the socket, or it can just be because you've taken the leg up too quickly and you're not stable underneath.
Yeah.
So I'll have a look and we'll try and work it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Bronwyn, has that answered pretty much all of your questions around your... Yes?
Yes, thank you. Very helpful.
Sensible people that have just given me their poses and we've given them the answers already. Okay. Okay, so we've got a little bit more time. Does anybody else want to go through a pose? Mary, you have something to say?
It's not actually about a pose, but I want to ask something about how you introduce the skills early in a class. If we are teaching an absolute beginner class, how much time should we allocate to introducing the skills and to the flow?
Okay, so again, it depends on your intention, right? So it depends who you're teaching and why, pretty much. So if it's absolute beginners, your aim will be to just get them through a sun salutation, you know, any basic stuff. So absolute beginners are just going to go, what do you mean downward dog? I don't understand what you mean. Your teaching of skills will be how to do a downward dog. Where do you put your foot in a warrior two? Okay, it'll be on that level of skill. Okay, so you will be saying, you know, depending on the age of your class, whether it's in a big group and it's like hot vinyasa flow. If it's in those big studios, you're just gonna have to go for it, because the studios will tell you, create a flow, do it fast, and then everybody else kind of just scrambles and tries to copy you. So you won't be explaining a lot. But if you're in a smaller class or a different type of studio, then for absolute beginners, you will be going, okay, guys, I want you all, we're going to step into warrior two. Okay, turn your front foot out, turn your back foot slightly in, arms out here. Now, most of you are leaning forward, come and lean back a bit. So it'll be on that level of skill. So it really does depend. Like with beginners, if you're taking it another level up from absolute beginners, say your group is, they know what downward dogs are and all of those kind of things, and you've decided it's a general flow class, but you want them to get a bit stronger, then you'll focus in quite quickly, but in quite a fast way, depends on the studio, a fast way of just bringing in, say you decide to do arm strength, and then you get them on their knees and they're doing tricep dips, and it really depends on the environment that you're teaching in, because I don't know, how many of you have gone to an Iyengar class before? Ah, a few, okay. So you will know, in an Iyengar class, all they do is talk to you. It's like literally, they will talk to you about a twist, a seated twist for 20 minutes. So, whereas in a modern vinyasa class, they'll say, turn around, twist to the right, twist to the left. That's it, end of story. So it depends on the environment that you're actually teaching in. So it's a tricky question. For me personally, I found what appealed to most people was they wanted vinyasa flow. If they were beginners, it was a slow vinyasa flow with more basic instruction. The more advanced, and then the middle lot of people actually just liked a bit of a flow and working towards a pose. So say something like Bakasana, crow, we do a sequence that actually most people can do pretty much everything in the sequence, just maybe not the final pose. Okay, so you just do a sequence. They don't even really know why they're doing it, but you're doing like rounded, like your Bakasana class thing, lying on your back, core work, all of that. And they're just doing a good yoga body move with a little bit of instruction thrown in. And then get to the final pose. Then it's like, put your arms in this way, drishti, lean forward, all of those things. And then a couple of tries at doing it. So it's putting in the instructions, but keeping it as part of a flow. Or you're teaching in a more of a Hatha Iyengar way, and that is very instructive. It depends. So it's a very vague answer. I apologize to your question, but it really depends. Then I get my advanced people, and all they want is instruction. They are not interested in flow at all. They like to warm up, but they want to go straight to the big poses and work on the big poses. And bringing it back to your own pose and to your pose analysis and your pose that you choose for peak pose sequencing, the more complex the pose, the more risky the pose, the more people need to go into almost like a workshop fashion to learn it. Like you cannot teach handstand by offering it in the middle of a vinyasa flow, right? For most people, a room full of, it doesn't even matter, 5 people, 10 people, 50, it doesn't matter. If you just go flow, for those who want to kick up, and then you move on. To help people to learn how to do any of those inversions, most of the time you can't do it in flow, you have to take them to the wall. Right? So then it becomes much more instructive. And a lot of the hot yoga studios don't allow that to happen. So therefore, what is taught is much more basic. But if you go to, and I'm talking South Africa based here and the UK, if you go to more gym environments, then they are happy for you to go to the wall. So it depends on those things. For me, I like the option of using the wall, using those things, because I believe that kind of helps people more. So that, again, I'm sorry, such a big answer to your question, right? Studio dependent, group dependent, I think, at the end of it. Is that okay? So,
yes, of course.
Very vague, like everything else. Does
No,
anyone else have anything they want to sneak in quickly? We've got 5 minutes. Wendy, oh, no, you just got lit up. Did you want to say anything, Wendy? No.
No.
No? Anybody else? No? You're all good? Amen?
The question, I forgot who raised up last time, about when you want to teach a pose that you're not able to do. Like, do you have any suggestion for that?
Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about that in yoga teaching, and it's a question that comes up. It came up on the 300 hour the other day, so you can know that even people that are already yoga teachers and teaching a lot still have that question. The answer we had, I promise you, I don't want to exaggerate, we probably had an hour and a half discussion on that one question. Okay, the answer is it's dependent on you as a teacher. Okay, it depends. So if you are a beginner teacher, for most people, you don't have the confidence to teach something you can't do. So it starts with confidence. And as you become more advanced, it depends again on your ability to read other people's bodies. So I will teach any pose to anybody, regardless of whether I can do it or not. It's irrelevant to me because I can read your body. I know what the pose requires. And after years and years and years of teaching, it's absolutely fine for, I will teach anybody anything pretty much. So, but that's after, you know, I keep thinking I must update my hours. I don't know, maybe 15, 20,000 hours of teaching. You know, but if you've only taught for 1 hour, maybe not. So I think that absolutely everybody has the ability to teach a pose you can't do. Absolutely. It just may take you a while to get there. That's what I always use the example. If you can't do splits, can you teach splits?
Yes.
Right? If you could teach a class with Ardha Hanumanasana, half splits, and then progress it a little bit more into a bit of a longer half splits, and then you could actually say, for those who wish to go into splits, please do, and they will. You know, it doesn't mean, if I can't teach you the flexibility poses, I can't actually, it's very difficult to teach because what you do is offer more than teach. You know, if somebody doesn't have the range to go into the pose, like splits, they don't have the range to go into the pose. The fact that I demonstrate splits is not going to help them if they haven't got the range to go into the pose. So it's, you know, it's meaningless as a teacher whether I can do splits or not. It's dependent on what sequence I put together and what the individual can do. Does that answer your question, Armin? Again, there's no absolutes in these things. There's just when you're ready. You know, it's a lot of people, teachers that I know, in fact, the majority of teachers I know cannot do a hand balance, a handstand balance, okay? But they still teach it. It's like Laura can't do a handstand balance because she's so mobile with her shoulders, but she'll teach it, you know, it's fine, you know, to teach it. Okay, Fabi, did you have a question?
Yes. At the beginning, when you touched on the poses that you chose to analyze, my internet cut out for a few minutes, but I heard you saying, I think, that you hope that we chose poses that we actually want to do and not, I don't remember, but revolve triangle is my worst pose to do, but I chose because I wanted to be more accessible to me. So I was just wondering what you can say about the pose, like what would be good to use as prayer poses, and whether it's a peak pose, and why it's difficult for my body, which is in other ways quite flexible.
Okay, so this is what I want you to go and explore for yourself. So I'm not going to give you too many tips. So let's just do this fairly quick because I know you guys have got to pop off. So first thing is, what does revolved triangle require in terms of flexibility?
Spinal flexibility.
Before that, much more flexibility.
Hamstrings.
Hamstrings, okay? So the classic thing with revolved triangle is, so you've got normal triangle, right? We're going to normal triangle, okay? And then, so if I go into normal use my sock. I go into normal triangle, right? I have to reach down. Maybe it's better if I show you this way. Hang on. It's better. I have to reach down here. Okay? But if I go into revolved triangle, where do I have to go? There, right? Same place, but with this side of my body. So I have to have even more flexibility to get down. Does that make sense? So revolved triangle, because I'm going further. So
yeah.
I'm going further. So revolved triangle needs way more flexibility than normal triangle. Okay, so that's
Cool.
in terms of the twist, how much, you guys probably, but you don't know this yet, but how much do you think we can all twist enough in our spines to do revolved triangle? Yes. The answer is yes. Okay? All of us have got, we don't have much range of rotation in our spine. In our lumbar spine, the lower back, we've only got 5 to 10 degrees. It's nothing. Okay? Absolutely nothing. So our thoracic, this bit, we have more, about 35. So the tube, it's about 40, but that's only, let's sit here, that's only this much. That's it. Okay, that's all we've got. So in revolved triangle, it doesn't require terribly much strength. A little bit, it requires, it's a bit balancy, it's a bit of a balance. Okay, it's a twist, so we need to use drishti, twisting, balance. But the skill comes from knowing what to move to get into the pose. So what do you think will help us get into the pose?
Well, you can allow some movement of the hip as you spiral, so that will extend your range.
Exactly, exactly. So if I don't use my hip, can you guys all see me when I demonstrate?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm here in the pose. So the first thing is in Trikonasana, I'm doing it this time so you can see this foot, okay? The first thing is in Trikonasana, I'm facing sideways, right? Okay, but in Parivrtta Trikonasana, I have to face my hips forward. That's the skill, okay? But then on top of that, if I don't allow my hips to come with me, I put my hand down here, this is my twist, right? Because I'm keeping the hips square. If I allow my hips, look, I'm turning already. Can you see my hips moving? I don't know if you can see, okay? I'm allowing my hips to move, to come with me, and then I can turn and go down, and turn, okay? But I'm allowing my hips to move, and that's where the skill comes into it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's allowing. So if I'm standing like this, if I'm in Trikonasana, my hips are like that. If I'm in pyramid, my hips are like that. If I'm in revolved, my hips are like that. Does that make sense? See, I've allowed, so pyramid, I'm going this way. Trikonasana, I'm going this way, okay? My hips are moving, but Parivrtta, if I start to round first, go down in a forward bend, I can only twist this much. I'm going to get stuck, okay? So I allow this hip to come, and look how much I can twist. If I don't allow the hip to come with me, can you see? I cannot go any further. I've got to allow that. Abby, does that make sense? Do you see it?
It does. Thank you, Catherine.
But it doesn't preclude the need to have a lot of flexibility. Okay, it really is a flexi pose, right? But then you would work with things like modifications. you know, using blocks, all of those different things. The Iyengas will even, for hours, will make you do it on chairs. We do it with the ropes. You can do it in all sorts of different ways to adapt if you don't have the flexibility to do it. But it is a tough pose. It really is. And to answer your last point, I don't know if it was your last point, is that revolved triangle can be a peak pose for beginners. Even though it's hard, it can be for beginners, but it can't be a peak pose for your sequencing, your choice of sequencing pose, okay? It's not complicated enough, even though it is still complicated enough. You could do it, but then you'd have to add on something else to it, like revolved half moon or something like that. Okay, is that, Fabi, you happy?
Yes, yes, that makes sense. Thank you, Kathy.
Good, guys.
Sorry.
Love and sorry, did you want to say something else? Hands up.
No,
okay.
I'm done.
You're done. Okay, cool. I'm going to love and leave you guys unless anybody's got anything else to say. Candice, Rick? Oh, was that a bye? It was a bye. It wasn't a hand.
Yeah.
I thought you were handing up. All right, guys, bye. It was lovely to see you all, and I will see you on Wednesday. Okay, send me a message if you need to ask me. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.